Hey there, everybody. It's Matt, aka Shakes the Comic Book Guy, here again with you. In this video, I'm doing a kind of part two to my origin story, I guess, on all this about my diagnosis, but not just that, but how it clicked other things in the past of my life into place. I kind of, when I was thinking about doing this video, had the analogy of, in the using of the term origin story and stuff, it's, play on like comic book characters, how Tony Stark gets the shrapnel, makes the arc reactor and magnet to keep him alive, Batman's parents get shot, Bruce gets hit by gamma rays. Well, that's all the origin story of them. Most of those characters have a previous life that you learn about through reading or watching the things that helps them become who they are, or maybe after their event happens, then they go through another level of it. They don't become Batman, Iron Man, the Hulk, Superman, just because of one incident. It's a contextualization of who they are with the incident that's caused them this growth. And that's what my diagnosis was for me. It wasn't just, oh, we figured it out. It came with realizations of what's been happening my entire life. So as I mentioned in, the first video that about the whole seizure and ending up at the hospital and all of that I covered in the first video. After that, I had a couple weeks of waiting around to get to my first neurologist appointment and my, actual in-depth MRIs and EEGs and things like that. And in that time, I was just waiting and wondering what had happened and what was going to happen next. It was, obviously not a fun, a rather stressful incident. As I said last time, don't smoke. I'm fucking terrible for it. I'm working on quitting, but it's hard, but hopefully I'll get to it, deal with it properly soon. But getting on with it. During all of that time that I was waiting for my appointment and stuff like that, I was just a wreck. I was having anxiety attacks constantly, multiple times a day, which I had them bad before, but it was never been, like this. And I'll talk more about the anxiety attacks kind of in the flow of how I think this story works. But finally, I get an appointment with my neurologist and stuff like that. We go over what happened, the information that he had from the ER doctors and paramedics that day and stuff. And we set myself up to go get, an MRI and a physical and an EEG. And MRI, physical, go, and nothing real new or news from that. And then I had my EEG. And during my EEG, I actually had another anxiety attack. And that's where I really want to get into what I'm saying when I say anxiety attack, because you can obviously tell I'm going somewhere with that. So for so many years, I'm 31 now, and the first time I can remember having like an actual physical anxiety attack was in high school, 15 or 16 years old. It was an asthma attack that I couldn't get under control, and the meds for my asthma didn't help, so it continued and got worse, and I had a full-blown anxiety attack. And what the anxiety attacks are for me, right? It's not even fun, like, thinking about and talking about them out loud in this weird way. A drink real quick. So, what it was like for me to have an anxiety attack was I would kind of first start to feel my heart race, and anything could trigger an anxiety attack. It was always kind of a stress-related thing. I would get self-conscious about, a way I said a word and think about that wrong, and head starts racing, and I would start getting excited, and my chest would just start beating and beating faster. And then after that, I would kind of get this rushing, tingling feeling from my head to my toes, kind of like a cold but warm numbness that would go from my head down to my toes and kind of like bounce back up. And my heart would start to beat faster, that feeling would intensify, and I would just start to feel scared by the entire thing. And kind of that cycle of emotions and feelings and sensations would get faster and faster and faster. It would become hard to talk just from such erratic things happening. And then if I didn't just get breathing under control and calm myself down, I would start sweating buckets, just drops of sweat constantly. I would have, the floor at my feet would be wet, look like, rain had happened or something. And at that point, that's when things are like really getting to their worst and stuff. It would be really weak and have trouble standing, and then usually would end up vomiting just up everything I had in me. And after that, I would almost every time wonderful, like just rush of euphoria and feeling better and like getting through it. And I don't know, that feeling actually almost kind of nice, but probably just because everything was so worse than before that. And as I said, I've been having that since high school. And before that, I was always a really nervous and anxious kid and stuff like that. My parents always remember that from me. I'd cause problems going to family trips just because I'd be worried about consequences of the littlest things. But that's a whole other part. So I have an anxiety attack, as I said, during my EEG, after, sitting there and the lights went off and flashed off and stuff. And just the entire situation was making me nervous and stressful, wondering about, like, what if nothing happens? What if they don't see anything, getting information? What does that mean about what happened? What if it does, And after, like, 30, 40 seconds or so of like feeling an anxiety attack coming on, my heart starting to race and me just thinking too fast and like just a little bit of sweat starting, I kind of got it to stop and everything was okay. And then the EEG tech asks me, what was all that? Am I okay? Is everything all right? And I, open my eyes and look up and was like, what was what? It's nothing happened. I mean, I had a little anxiety attack. Did you guys see that on the machine or something? Like, no, you had a seizure. You had a seizure for about a minute there. Like, it's all here on the chart and stuff. I seized off during what I thought was just a quick little anxiety attack. And with that information, went into, with my doctor and stuff like that. It was actually one of the most interesting and abnormal EEGs he says he's ever seen, because it's actually a right and left lobe seizure that I don't have all the proper terminology for exactly what it is and stuff. I'm still learning up on a lot of it, but it was, I think it was a really bad and abnormal complex partial seizure. And yeah, with that, like, we, got the diagnosis of, this very interesting form of epilepsy that he hasn't seen in many years of practicing. He says it's really not a normal case for right and left lobe at the same time. That's not normally how it even can work electrically, but I'm not informed enough to really talk about that. But that's when we got me on my first dosage of Keppra, which, what was it? 750 milligrams, I think, was my starting dosage every 12 hours. And so I started taking the Keppra, and like the next day, my anxiety attacks went away. Like, even until I got the dosage and started taking, that was like 4 or 5 days for insurance and the doctors and pharmacy to get me my meds. Almost immediately, my anxiety attacks went away. And I've been on an increasing dosage of meds and other ones because I still have seizures in my sleep, but we'll get into that in another video. So yeah, I started taking the Keppra, and I have not had an anxiety attack since. It's been, frankly, one of the most wonderful things that's happened. Because, as I said, I've been living with that for half my life, just as a daily, constant, multiple times a day reoccurrence. And lost the track I wanted to get on from there. But then, and I guess, yeah, in talking to my therapist after that and starting to question various aspects of my youth, talking with parents and old friends who I'd been out of touch with, back in grade school. I think it was grade school, second, third grade. That's when I was diagnosed with ADD, and I was put on like Ritalin and Concerta and Straterol, Adderall over various years and into high school. Those messed with me in the heads. I guess precursor to all of that. I'd always in school and to this day kind of been labeled a daydreamer. I kind of, zone out and don't notice things. My friends used to make fun of me back in grade school for I would say like a word 2, 3, 4 times under my breath in the middle of talking. And they thought I was like doing a thing or, oh, what a weird tick Matt has. And it was always a running joke and so many other weird things like that. Like always trying to explain to parents and doctors about how I just never felt right, like something was wrong. And that's where the ADD, the depression, asthma, anxiety attacks, those were the 4 real big diagnosis I always kind of lived with through and dealt with meds that constantly made weird other side effects and stuff like that. Until in high school, one day at work, I worked at a grocery store right down the street from where I actually still live. I live in the same neighborhood in a different house that I grew up from, so good old weird small town California. But I was pushing carts from that were left inside the store to go put them outside, and my world zoomed back, kind of. It's weird how I even describe it. If anybody out there is old enough and has seen Being John Malkovich, that's always the best visual I've had of like being inside of someone's brain, watching through their eyes as if it was a television or something like that. And just not really being in control, and my body's just in kind of autonomous mode and being terrified and screaming out, but just not having real control of anything. That happened a couple of times over a month or so, and that's when I just went cold turkey from all of my ADD and depression meds. And soon after, I ended up smoking pot for the first time with a friend of mine. And since that day, basically, I had always smoked pot. Just every day, was always stoned. It was like the only thing that made me feel kind of all right, and also my anxiety attacks were less likely to happen when I was stoned. And that kind of just became my life. Well, going through, just the measures of, work and school sometimes and stuff, and smoking weed constantly through that. And then, we had me getting on the meds and stuff like that, and talking with friends and talking with other epileptics and stuff, and coming to find out that all these weird tics and things like that, and other people, the way they've described their early, before they knew they actually had epileptic seizures, their experiences, it lines up so much in such a fascinating way. And so many other people I've talked to, they had the ADD and depression and anxiety attacks, little trifecta of diagnoses and meds that never seem to work. I had an ex-girlfriend at one point who told me that weird attack in the store was a pharmacologically induced delusional psychosis. Maybe that was it, but seems more likely I just had a really weird seizure mixed with meds I was on. But the reason I kind of made that tangent there was, as I said, I started my meds and I haven't had an anxiety attack since, not once. Those anxiety attacks I'm wrongly calling attacks. They're pretty certainly oral seizures that I had, and that would a lot of the times predicate actual severe seizures. I'm pretty certain of that now too, because I would often have anxiety attacks in my sleep in the last 10 or, 8, 10 years. Very often wake up in my bed just terrified and sore from cramping up and having sweated massive buckets. And usually that would happen after I would have just a attack dream, as I called them, feeling like I'm having an anxiety attack and like on the verge of being awake, almost like a sleep terror. But the way people describe sleep terrors never really seemed accurate for me. And stuff like that stopped happening too since the meds. As I said, I still have seizures in my sleep, but like my first grand mal, I'm not conscious or aware of any seizure I have. I never have been. It's just how it's continued to be, I guess. But all of that stopped too when I got on my Keppra meds and stuff. Just no more feeling of anxiety. It's all gone. But also at the same time, I stopped needing to smoke weed. And like, trying to describe that is another weird thing where, up until this past year when I started all of this, I needed to smoke weed every day, all the time, constantly. It was just a thing. I always had weed. I always had a vape pen or something, some extra edibles lying around. I could always just get that edge off at any time. It, got to the point where it was a part of life. I didn't even have to think about it. When I was younger and a teenager in early 20s, that kind of informed a lot of my decisions, was just how to make sure I could continue getting high and how I could work a job with all that. And then into 20s and now 30s, it was just what I did. And almost immediately after, oh, hi Gyda. Everyone say hi to Gyda. Can we see her? Yes, this is my wonderful little kitty cat that my girlfriend got me in December, actually. Not too long after this all started. She's a wonderful little kitten, but a little bit of a terror, but an absolute love. And she's pretty dope, and I love the shit out of her. Huh, Gyda? She wants to be fed right now, though, and we're just not at that time, little brat. Where was I? Oh, yeah, talking about the weeds. But after I started my meds, I just don't need to smoke weed anymore. There's no urge. There's no spot that it was filling that I needed to keep filled, is the best way I could put it. I mean, it's legal where I live, so don't get in trouble, guys, and stuff. And especially with epilepsy, I think it has a certain help if you're doing it the right way and you're finding the right balance of CBD or whatever. But, I sometimes have like magic games over here with my friends and stuff, and, they bring over weed and I'll smoke a little bit here and there, and it's all good fun, but it's just not really a part of my life anymore. That's, like the same thing with drinking. It's just, which also is a difficult thing for epilepsy. Everyone figure that out. I'm still researching up on all that, but it's just an extra little indulgence and a fun thing after a long week, and not a thing I needed to do. So that's been a very rewarding thing in this still rough and scary process that's changed my life in, such a profound way, as I'm sure many of you people know. Like, I lost my driver's license and stuff, so that's not something I can do anymore, and I work, 20 some odd miles away from where I live, so getting to work's always a process in a town with poor public transportation, and the way that affects finances, and you become a burden on your family, or you feel like it and stuff, and it just, fundamentally changes a lot of who you were in ways you didn't think, kind of like just how being able to move freely. But then also this recontextualization of my entire life has been profound. The best way I could describe it as, I have gone through my entire life feeling like I wasn't myself, like I didn't have control of my brain in some fundamental way, and it was always this very like self-ostracizing thing. I never felt like I was who I could be if whatever X factor was filled in. And since getting diagnosed and medicated and learning about the seizures and epilepsy, while the meds themselves come with just so many rough aspects and side effects and things I'm still learning to deal with, and I'll go into that in some other video in more detail. But even with all of that and the driving, the getting on some seizure meds that have actually started to curve whatever problem I have in my brain that we're still trying to diagnose out and stuff has been, I don't know, empowering is not the right word, but I feel like I now know, I feel like I'm closer to knowing who I am in a feeling comfortable in my own body kind of way. Like, not only, like, I guess I also have answers too for why I am the way I am and why I always felt like I wasn't normal, and not in like a, oh, it's weird to explain, but not in the way that everyone else feels like, oh, I'm not normal, and, you know, it's the, oh, be who yourself is. This was not a matter of being who myself was. I felt like something wasn't right. Something was switched wrong, and now we know there's an electrical little, you know, switch that's just turned in the wrong way in my brain, and that's where the seizures come from, and the epilepsy, and weird miswirings, and, you know, these times in my childhood where people thought I was space casing out, and I don't even remember it, because I was sitting there having a little, you know, like, absentee seizure and stuff. Things like that have been happening the entire time. I've shown videos to my mother of, you know, people having absentee seizures and people's discussions. A lot of actually, where, you know, I'm going to mainly be posting this video to r/epilepsy, a lot of other people's descriptions and videos that have been posted on there. I've been able to show her that, and she just instantly sees me like as a kid and, you know, as a teenager trying to explain things in the exact same way that people are explaining it. It's, I know, I just keep coming back to the word profound, not only this self-discovery, but in what got me to here and sharing it as I babbled on in the last video of all these other people I'm seeing talking about and sharing their experiences. And it's, the tune is so similar every time. And yeah, it's a big part I've been having with all of this the whole time, actually, is coming to terms with not wanting to blame or be angry at, you know, the people in my past, my doctors and my family and teachers and people who didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it, and the world in general didn't have the knowledge of epilepsy that I'm here trying to, you know, put down in my own little chunket of data and get saved to the world, because that was the big thing. There was no one out there talking and doing it like this in a place that can be spread to so many ears. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said that I was completely over any feelings of anger or wanting to blame or shift the guilt to others and stuff. It's a thing I'm still working towards, but I recognize that that's not the case. Everyone was always trying to do the best for me the entire time, but, you know, we just missed a thing, and it's just kind of the way it all ended up. I don't know, I feel like I could have a whole nother video somewhere in the near future on kind of talking about that. Like, that's a whole deep thing that I've been talking to my therapist about, but working on. And, you know, even since the diagnosis, I'm still on a path to getting this all figured out in the proper way. I've actually got an EMU visit scheduled down in UCLA here in the next month and a half and stuff to get a real in-depth long-term EEG scan, because my doctor thinks I'm going to have to get brain surgery, multiple actually. That's still a weird pill to swallow, that's going to happen, especially in like about a year and a half's time, having multiple major surgeries. Something I haven't mentioned that much in any of my posts on r/epilepsy or here before, but it was about 4 or 5 months before I had my first grand mal seizure that I actually beat testicular cancer. I had to lose a testicle in the process, but, you know, rather not have cancer than you know, have two balls. But that was a weird and deep experience as well, that came out with, you know, a whole bunch of kind of self-actualizing and having to think on myself as well, and who I've become and what I was before, and did what happened to me medically, is it going to inform on who I am? And then this all happens after. But that, I guess, is, you know, a thing I want to mention, and what this, you know, is, this origin story is, this disjointed back and forth. But I mean, that's kind of how it has been for me in the process of me realizing and spending time to think about what happened back and forth. I don't know, it just came to mind. I kind of want to call this video an epileptic tale in time, because that's kind of the best way I can describe what this process since diagnosis has been. It's not just about now, but it's about always, and how to deal with all of that knowledge now moving forward. I don't have like a succinct ending for this video or anything specifically like that. I knew I was kind of going to get a little off pace like this, because it's such a disjointed thing to deal with. But I guess my entire point is, I don't even know, just more of like, well, I wanted to share, but I hope that maybe that can help someone else going through all of this, kind of help them recontextualize, and maybe get to the point where I did, where even though this is such a terrible thing to go through, epilepsy and the seizures and the doctors and stuff, getting on even semi-right meds and taking the time to think about myself, I feel like a fuller person now than I was before, in such wonderful ways, that I used to wish, or I used to think, you know, why me, why did this happen, and wish that there was some way that it couldn't. I'd be just crying for, you know, an entire day almost in the first few weeks of all this, to where now, and in a weird way, I am thankful that this happened. And I mean, that's not even with my own power and strength and self-actualization. Just got a text message. And self-actualization and stuff. But I got there through people who were sharing what they were going through and doing the same thing I'm doing now, albeit most of the time I feel like they're doing it better. I'm still being lazy about getting an area in my house and room set up to shoot. So now you get the walk and talks with me, but I'll probably still do those every now and then, even when they make things nicer, because this and being able to walk around and gestate and run into my cute cat running around in the backyard, it makes this flow much more naturally. And, you know, thank you everybody for watching and putting up with my silly walking around videos and stuff. But I hope that you guys are getting something out of this, because even just being able to share and talk in a long form, we're at almost 30 minutes right now. I don't think I've ever been able to talk about this for 30 minutes straight without, you know, I'm talking to someone else and they have a thought to interject, and it kind of gets off track of the whole thing. So really, thank you all for being here with me and doing this again. Who knows if I'll be putting out videos at this regularity, what it's been 2 days or something, but I've got a lot to say right now, and I want to figure out other things to talk about and other stuff to do with this channel as I go forward in the future. So I wish you all the best, and stay cool, dudes. Have a great one.